Welcome to Balder's Kitchen, where the magic's cooked up. This is guide number 12, and in this guide I want to give you 3 ways that you can use the resistance technology called Stealth Cloak. Okay, it's the technology that gives you invisible transports, right? So let's go through to the resistances tech tree, right? First of all, if you're new to resistance, just forget about Stealth Cloak and just learn how to play them anyway, because they're a really flexible civ and they're great fun to play. You can do so many different types of play with them. Okay, but always come back to this if you do think about Stealth Cloak and are looking for some suggestions on how you can use it. So let's go through to the tech tree. It's researched in the War Center. So let's go all the way over to the War Center here. Okay, so Sensor Cloak, right, that's quite early. You can research it at tech level 3. That's surprisingly early, but it's really, really expensive. It costs 350 carbon plus 200 ore plus 800 Nova crystals. So what I'd recommend, get your economy roaring a little bit first, build that second command center, get out more workers, and then snap this up when it doesn't seem as expensive because you've collected more resources. Possibly an exception is if you're on one of those maps where you can build a Jedi temple, get a Padawan out, and pick maybe like 2 or 3 holograms, then you might have more Nova coming in which case you could possibly research this sooner. Okay. Now, on the subject of the sensor cloak, it's really noticeable that as resistance, you can't build assault mechs at all. Okay. And also, to a lesser extent, you can't build heavy pummels. And I think the reason for that is if you combine those things with sensor cloak with invisible transports, things could start to get a little bit crazy. So imagine having 5 assault mechs in an invisible transport. You could drop them in your opponent's base, blow things up, and then the moment they came in any danger, like if Mounties started to attack them, you could just pop them back up into the invisible transport, move them somewhere else, and repeat. And I think that would be open to way too much abuse. And to a lesser extent, it's similar, isn't it, with heavy pummels? If you can take, for example, if your opponent's got a fortress up, you could fly your invisible transport over the fortress, drop the heavy pummels, try to take the fortress down. You'd have a good chance of doing it. But then even if you got into trouble, like Mounties came along or something, and it looks like you wouldn't be able to get the fortress down, the invisible air transport is just above it, and you can just pop them back up into the transport, and you've not really lost anything there. Okay, so I think that they're open to abuse, and that's probably the reason you can't build assault mechs or heavy pummels. So let's go on to these 3 amazing ways that you could use invisible transports. First one I thought of is get yourself going, build maybe 3 air transports, go to your workers and fill those transports with workers. So that'd be 15 workers, something like that. You could do more, you can do less. What you're going to do is build a surprise fortress in your enemy's base. Okay, so fly with your invisible transports to your enemy's base, find a really nice sweet spot, drop your workers, and start to build a fortress. Okay, if you can't get the fortress up, you can put your workers back in the air transport, maybe fly them over somewhere quiet on a board and just build a carbon processor and get them somewhere quiet collecting carbon. But if you can get the fortress up, you can drop all of those workers into the fortress, so it does an amazing amount of damage, extra damage. Then if you can get a foothold, maybe in your still collecting some more ore in your base, pop them out of the fortress in your opponent's base, build another fortress. Any problems, drop them back into the fortress so it still does loads of damage. Okay, so that's one to try. You can give that a go. That could be fun. The second one has a few similarities. Basically, you're going to be building Jedi Knights to steal your opponent's workers. So build 2 invisible air transports, build 5 Jedi Knights, pop them in one of the air transports, fly them over to your opponent's base, drop your Jedi in amongst your opponent's workers and convert them. So convert 5 workers, and then once you've converted those workers, stick them up into the air transport. Maybe you can convert more workers, convert another 5, stick them up into the air transport, and you can steal your opponent's workers. Okay, so your opponent's going to be losing 5 or 10 workers, and then you're going to have a nice clean way to escape with 5 or 10 workers. You don't even have to take them back to your base and do what I said before. Just find somewhere quiet on the board, drop them, build a carbon processor, and have them collecting carbon. Another thing, I have had great fun with this, I have to say, is combine 1 and 2. If you convert enemy workers in your opponent's base, use the workers to get up a turret, a fortress inside your opponent's base. So steal them, convert them to your side, and then use them as workers to build defensive structures inside your enemy's base. And that can be really frustrating for an opponent. So that's 2 fun ways. The last way, let's wrap up with this one, is the use of heavy weapons. Okay, now cannons aren't great because the thing about cannons is it takes quite a while to deploy them and undeploy them. So if you drop cannons near an opponent's base and mounties come out, you can lose the cannons before you have time to fold them up and get them back up into your air transport. So cannons are not such a good idea. We discussed pummels, but I want to look at artillery and anti-aircraft mobiles. Okay, artillery, because it's a bit like we discussed with assault mechs. If you can pop artillery into an invisible transport, you can drop it, fire it, maybe fire it at workers, because remember it's got a kind of burst effect, an arrow effect. So drop the artillery, use it to fire with, and then if mounties come out, something like that, pop the artillery back up into the invisible air transports and try and abuse it a bit like that. So it won't have the same effect as assault mechs, but you can have real fun popping out artillery, using it, and then popping it back into your invisible transports. And then the other one, similar, is anti-air mobiles. Okay, anti-air mobiles are really, really strong against air units. They're good for protection. So, like, even if you're doing something, say you're putting Jedi Knights into your transports or artillery, if you stick in like, even 1 or 2 anti-air mobiles, if when you're dropping your stuff in your opponent's base, and like air units come towards you, anti-air mobiles are really strong at taking down air units. They're kind of almost better than having your own air protection from fighters or something like that. Just being able to drop out a few anti-air mobiles from your transports. So I'll stop there. I hope that's food for thought. If you can think of a different way of using the invisible transports, let me know. But I think that's 3 really good ways that you can get going with them. And I've tried a few of those in game, and for me, it worked quite nicely. So let's stop there.